Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, part two of my interview with that incredibly entertaining fellow, Michael Caine. Michael Caine later in the programme. Then the soldier who made that speech in Iraq, Tim Collins. Dennis Ross on the prospects for a Middle Eastern breakthrough, and a look at Pakistan as the coalition seems to be facing its first crisis. But first, Britain's Duke of York, Prince Andrew, is travelling to Egypt this weekend to co-chair the World Economic Forum on the Middle East. Like Davos earlier in the year, all the movers and shakers are due to be there, from President Bush and Egyptian President Mubarak to Tony Blair and King Abdullah of Jordan. Prince Andrew is the Queen Elizabeth's second son, fourth in line to the throne. For the last 7 years, he's been around the world travelling, promoting British business. 25 countries in 1 year last year, I think. I went to Buckingham Palace, where else, to meet him before he set off for the Middle East.
The World Economic Forum Middle East Conference that's at Sharm el-Sheikh this weekend will cover a great many issues. There'll be some political issues that are quite definitely at the top of the agenda. But there are other issues. There's water, there's food, there's leadership, there's business, there's the oil, there's inflation, there's culture, and how we work together to solve quite a lot of these problems. And so I think that some of them are opportunities, of course, and it's the business opportunities that are at the forefront. But I'm sure that there will be an undercurrent of concern and interest in some of the other things.
Are you an optimist about the future of that part of the world, or a pessimist, or half and half?
I'm very definitely somebody who looks at a glass half full rather than a glass half empty. I think that there have been periods of time in the not too distant past where you could perhaps be viewing life pretty pessimistically, if you consider the situation with Iran, the situation with Iraq, the situation in Gaza, the situation in Lebanon, and particularly over the last couple of weeks. But I think that when you come to Lebanon, for instance, the movement that has taken place in the last couple of days, and the movement that I hope that will take place in the forthcoming days when they manage to get to Doha, one must remember that is an Arab League fostered agreement with no help from the United States or anybody else. And I think that is probably a seed change and a key change in my view of optimism. And I see that as very optimistic, that the locals can actually solve their own problems, and it doesn't require superpowers.
And I mean, you were commenting in the Herald Tribune earlier this year that one of the things that there were occasions when people in the UK would wish that those in responsible conditions in the US might listen and learn from our experience, because we've been through them all.
I think that we probably have been through them all. And I think that a lot of lesson learning has gone on, and I think that you only have to look at the performance of General Petraeus and the US ambassador at the Senate hearings, and you can quite clearly see from that how the US has not necessarily learnt anything, but it has worked out for itself how to cope with an insurgency in a way that I think that shows a far greater understanding than we ever had.
One of the other topics, there's been a lot of headlines, of course, in the last month or two about Prince Harry in Afghanistan, which took me back and took you back in terms of quotes and so on, to the Falklands. And you said in one quote, I think again to the Herald Tribune, that your active time in the Falklands had, quote, changed you out of all recognition and left you with a different view of life. It was that important, was it?
Oh, completely. Completely. You don't go to an active war zone and not come back a changed person. I have to admit that I've not actually had an opportunity to speak to Harry since he's got back. But I'm sure he will have had a similar experience to mine. But mine was It was just a change. I went away a boy and I came back a man. It is the way that I described it. I think even back in 1982, I said that.
Well, that's when we first talked.
Well, actually, I think I said that there were some sharp edges, and war takes the sharp edges off very, very quickly, because you begin to understand who you are. You'll put yourself into the danger. Sometimes you don't know you're putting yourself into danger. Other times you do. I remember being in a missile attack and having to lie on the deck. And then the sort of thought processes that go through your mind at the time. One of my colleagues was actually playing with a Rubik's Cube. And as the warning came through to hit the deck, he completed the Rubik's Cube. Now, had anything gone wrong, and we'd have been hit, and we'd have been killed in that particular attack, if we'd been killed in that particular attack, they would have found 2 dead bodies and a completed Rubik's Cube. And what would people have thought of that? And that was the sort of thought process that one had after.
You had a well-deserved, delightful compliment from your own dear daughter, from Eugenie, in celebrating her 80th birthday in the Tatler, her interview in the Tatler, where she described you and the Duchess of York, Sarah, as the best divorced couple she knows, which everybody feels that you are the happiest divorced couple in the world.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. We've worked very, very much on the principle that our children are the most important aspect of our lives, regardless of what we may or may not think of each other. The fact is that we're still friends. We have jointly brought up our children, and we thought it was actually very important that, bearing in mind the sort of lifestyle and things that they've got to lead, that just having a one-parent family and arguing about it was ridiculous, particularly in our state. And so we decided that was what we would do, and we've stuck to it. And they've turned out to be the 2 fantastic children, and we're extremely proud of them.
Well, I was talking to a very attractive blonde girl yesterday, and she said, "Who have you got on the show today?" And I said that you were on the show today, and she said, "Will you ask him one question for me?" She said, "Will you ask him, what does it feel like to be royal?" I thought it was an interesting question.
What does it feel like
to be royal?
The honest answer is it feels exactly the same as it feels to be you, except that I have a different set of experiences and environmental upbringing, and that is all there is. Honestly, it is the only difference.
And that sometimes people walk 2 foot behind you.
Yeah, but that's
not important.
That's just part of it. And the other difference is perhaps that we have, I hope, a greater ability to be able to help people, not only here in the UK, but also globally. And I believe that very, very strongly, that we have a sense of duty and a sense of responsibility. I've taken on the business community in this country as a champion for them. And I believe it's very important that they should get the best advantage and the best opportunities, because our competitors in other nations will do exactly the same thing. And if we don't get out there and help them, then there aren't very many other people who will.
Here's to it.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good job as ever.
No, thank you very much indeed.
In a moment, Dennis Ross on the chances for a US-sponsored breakthrough on Israel and Palestine. And after all his experience, he should know.